You stayed late again last night. Not because you wanted to, because you thought you had to. Because somewhere along the way you convinced yourself that if you just kept saying yes to the extra project, to the weekend email, to the quick favor that ate 3 hours of your Thursday, they'd see it. They'd recognize it. And when it came time to cut the team, they'd remember who showed up. They didn't. Here's what you were taught to believe, either by your parents, your first manager, or just by watching how the world seemed to work. Hard work gets noticed. Availability equals reliability. Reliability equals job security. And the more you give, the more valuable you become. It sounds logical. It feels moral even. Like there's a kind of dignity in being the one who never says no, the one who figures it out, the one who's always in their inbox, always on the call, always willing to pick up the slack when someone else drops it. You built an identity around it. You became the go-to person, and for a while it felt good. People came to you. Your name came up in meetings. You were needed. That feeling being needed, it's a drug. And nobody warns you that some drugs are just slow traps. Because here's what was actually happening under the surface, while you were grinding through those late nights and skipping your lunch breaks to hit a deadline that wasn't even yours. The system was taking notes, not on your sacrifice, on your limit, or more specifically the fact that you didn't seem to have one. There's a quiet, invisible rule that runs through almost every corporate environment, and almost nobody talks about it out loud. Work expands to fill the space of whoever doesn't resist it, not whoever's most qualified, not whoever has the capacity, whoever doesn't push back, whoever absorbs it quietly and keeps going. You became that person. And once you became that person, it was nearly impossible to stop being them, because now it was expected. The late nights stopped being impressive and became baseline. The extra projects stopped being noticed and became standard. Your willingness stopped being a trait and became a job requirement that nobody put in writing. And the worst part, you still thought you were building goodwill. You thought each yes was a deposit into some invisible account, and that one day when it mattered, they'd make a withdrawal on your behalf. A promotion, a raise, a moment where someone in a room said, "We can't lose this person." But that's not how the account works. In corporate, that account doesn't exist. What actually exists is a perception, and you'd been quietly destroying yours. Let's talk about how this system actually operates, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Corporations are not meritocracies. They perform meritocracy. They use language like top performers and high-value contributors, but what they are actually measuring is far more subtle and far more brutal than output. They are measuring leverage. Who has it? Who doesn't? When you say yes to everything, you are actively giving away your leverage. You're signaling that your time has no boundary, that your energy is a renewable resource they can keep drawing from, that you will stretch, bend, absorb, and ask for nothing in return. And organizations, like all systems, optimize. They find the path of least resistance. And if you've made yourself that path smooth, available, unresisting, the work will keep flowing toward you. Not as a reward, as a convenience. Meanwhile, the person who says no strategically, who pushes back on scope, who asks clarifying questions before committing, who declines the 6 p.m. meeting because they have a standing boundary around that time, that person reads differently in the room. They read as someone with standards, with self-awareness, with an understanding of their own value. And that, paradoxically, makes them more valuable to the organization. Because people protect what feels scarce. Nobody hoards something they can have unlimited access to. This is the part that stings. The more available you are, the less valuable you become. Not in a motivational poster kind of way. In a real, observable, organizational behavior kind of way. It's not about attitude. It's about economics. Scarcity creates value. Unlimited supply destroys it. You were never taught this. You were taught the opposite. And the system benefited from your ignorance. So why do smart people keep falling into this? Because it's not really about the job. The yes habit doesn't start in the office. It starts long before that, in classrooms where raising your hand made you safe, in homes where being agreeable kept the peace, in adolescence where being liked felt like survival. By the time you get to a corporate environment, saying yes isn't a strategy anymore. It's a reflex, a deeply wired response to threat. Because somewhere in your nervous system, the word no is still associated with rejection, with conflict, with being seen as difficult or uncooperative or worse, replaceable. So you say yes not because you want to, but because the alternative feels dangerous. And that fear is real. The job market is real. The bills are real. You're not irrational. But what you may not have considered is that the thing you're doing to stay safe is the same thing that's making you invisible. That's what makes this particular trap so elegant. Your protection mechanism is the trap. Here's where the shift happens. The problem was never your effort. You worked hard. That part was real. The problem was that you put all your chips on sacrifice and none on perception. And in corporate, perception is the game. The person who gets promoted isn't always the one who did the most work. It's the one who made their work feel rare, who made their presence feel intentional, who made leadership feel like access to them was a privilege, not a given. Effort without scarcity is just labor, and labor gets commoditized, gets outsourced, gets restructured away. What can't be commoditized is someone who understands their own worth and behaves accordingly. Someone who doesn't fill every silence with accommodation. Someone who, when given an unreasonable request, doesn't just absorb it but responds with something that reframes the conversation. In corporate, boundaries don't limit you. They define your worth. That's not a soft concept. It's a strategic one. Nobody tells you this when you start your first job. Nobody sits you down and says, the most dangerous thing you can be in a corporate environment is endlessly agreeable. But look at the people who actually have power in those spaces. Not just titles, real influence. They don't scramble. They don't overcommit. They don't respond to every Slack message within 4 minutes like their job depends on it, because they've made it clear their job doesn't depend on it. They have opinions. They decline things. They choose their battles instead of fighting every battle someone else hands them. And the room reads that as confidence. Leadership even. The person who says yes to everything is a resource. The person who says yes selectively is an asset. Resources get depleted. Assets get protected. You don't have to flip a switch overnight. That's not how any of this works in real life, and anyone who tells you otherwise has never actually sat in a corporate environment trying to keep a paycheck. But there's a difference between saying no and saying not like this. When someone hands you a task that's not yours, you don't have to refuse it outright. You can ask what gets deprioritized to make room for it. That one question changes the dynamic entirely. It signals that your capacity is finite, that you're managing a real workload, that adding something means something else moves. That's not resistance. That's professional
maturity. The data
maturity.
analysis reveals some critical
And most
patterns.
managers, when faced
We
with
must
that
consider the
question,
implications
either help you
carefully.
reprioritize
This could
or
affect our
quietly find
strategy
someone
moving
else for
forward.
the task.
What are your thoughts?
Either outcome is a win. When you're the one who never asks that question, you're the one who gets the task every single time. You can also stop being the first to respond. Stop performing availability. Not to be passive-aggressive, just to stop training people that you're always on, always ready, always there. Because once that's the expectation, not meeting it reads as failure, and meeting it constantly gives you nothing. Let the silence breathe sometimes. Let people wonder briefly. It costs you nothing and quietly shifts how you're perceived. The version of you that thought saying yes would save your job, that version wasn't weak or wrong. That version was doing the only thing they knew how to do. But the game has rules that nobody posts on the wall. And the biggest one is this: the workplace does not reward devotion. It rewards positioning. You can keep being the person who absorbs everything and asks for nothing. Some people do that their whole careers. They survive. They get their paychecks. They retire quietly. Or you can start playing the actual game. Not by becoming cold or calculating, but by understanding clearly that your time and your energy are the most valuable things you bring into that building, and that how you spend them tells everyone around you exactly what they are worth. They'll treat you accordingly. The question is, who gets to decide what that number is? Them or you?